The rain came down in sheets so thick it felt like the sky itself was breaking apart. My windshield wipers slapped furiously, but they couldn't keep up with the torrent. The back roads of rural Texas stretched endlessly in front of me, twisting into blackness. No streetlights, no signs of life. I had no business being out there that late, but something inside me kept driving, as if the road itself had some answer waiting for me at the end. The tires hissed against puddles, and every mile my chest felt heavier. Maybe it was the weather. Maybe it was the silence that had been my only companion for far too long. Then it happened, a sickening sputter, a cough, and the engine gave out. I cursed, slamming my palms against the steering wheel as the car rolled to a dead stop. The headlights dimmed, the hum of the motor faded, and all that was left was the roar of the storm pressing against the windows. Perfect? I muttered, though the word felt hollow in my mouth. Of course this would happen. Of course I'd be left stranded, alone, in the middle of nowhere. I sat for a while, staring into the rain-washed darkness. No cell service, no passing cars. No one knew where I was, and truthfully I wasn't sure I cared. Maybe this was fitting. My life had been unraveling for years. Relationships that started with sparks fizzled into ashes. Friends who once swore we'd never lose touch had stopped answering my calls. My family? They'd long since turned into polite strangers, bound to me only by blood and fading obligation. Somewhere in the distance, thunder cracked, deep and rolling, like laughter from something ancient and cruel. I pressed my forehead to the steering wheel, feeling the cold sweat of despair cling to my skin. For the first time in years, I admitted something to myself. I was tired of carrying it all alone. The car quickly grew cold without the heater. My shirt clung damp against me, and when I opened the door, the storm swallowed me whole. Rain hammered my back, soaking me instantly, chilling me straight through to the bone. I pulled my jacket tighter, though it was a useless gesture. I might as well have been wrapping myself in tissue paper. The gravel beneath my boots turned to slick mud as I stumbled onto the shoulder of the road. I looked one way, then the other. Darkness. Nothing but the hiss of rain and the far-off wail of wind pushing through the trees. No sign of help. I started walking anyway. My shoes squelched, my legs ached, but I couldn't sit in that car like a coffin, waiting for morning. Every step sent a fresh spray of water up my pants. The storm had a way of seeping not just into my clothes but into my chest, into my heart. I thought about the years I had wasted on jobs that drained me dry, people who left without looking back, dreams that seemed to wither the second I touched them. It all felt like the same storm I was in now, relentless, unyielding, and uncaring. Minutes bled into what felt like hours. My vision blurred, both from the rain and from exhaustion. I thought about just sitting down in the mud, letting it all wash over me, becoming another forgotten story on some forgotten road. Then, through the curtain of rain, I saw it. A faint glow. Warm, golden. Not lightning, not a trick of my imagination. Light, steady, human. My heart kicked against my ribs. I blinked, wiped the rain from my eyes, and squinted. Through the downpour, a silhouette took shape. The slanted roof of a ranch house, its outline carved against the storm like a promise I didn't deserve. Felt impossible. Out there in the nothing, a home? Shelter? My breath hitched, a mix of disbelief and desperate hope. I staggered forward, my boots slipping, but I kept moving, eyes locked on that glow like it was the only star in a drowned sky. As I trudged closer, details emerged. A wooden porch, faint lamplight flickering in the window, the shadow of a rocking chair swaying in the wind. My pulse hammered louder than the rain. I don't know what I expected. Maybe some stranger who'd turn me away, maybe no one at all. But I knew one thing. I couldn't survive the night out there. That house was salvation or nothing. The storm roared as I reached the front steps, water dripping down my face, jacket heavy as stone. I paused, hand trembling before I knocked. My reflection in the glass pane of the door startled me. Hollow eyes, wet hair plastered to my forehead. A man who looked just as stranded inside as he did outside. I swallowed hard, raised my fist, and knocked against the wood. For a moment, nothing. Just rain, thunder, and my own ragged breathing. Then footsteps. Slow, heavy, sure. My chest tightened. Whoever was on the other side of that door was about to change everything. The door creaked open slowly, the warm glow from inside spilling onto the porch, cutting through the rain like a blade. I blinked against it, water dripping into my eyes. For a heartbeat, all I could see was a broad frame filling the doorway, a silhouette of someone tall, steady, and solid as an oak. Then the light revealed him. My breath caught. My knees nearly buckled. It was him. Older now, his face carved with lines the boy I once knew never had. His jaw was stronger, shaded with stubble that caught the lamplight. His shoulders looked broader, his chest thicker beneath a flannel shirt that clung to him from the damp air. His skin was darker from years in the sun, weathered by the land itself. But his eyes, oh God, his eyes were exactly the same. Deep, knowing, and impossibly familiar. I felt 17 again, standing under bleachers after football practice, stealing glances when no one was watching. I remembered the way those eyes once made me feel seen when the rest of the world wanted me invisible. He stared at me too, just as stunned. His lips parted, though no words came at first. Only the sound of rain crashing around us filled the silence between our shocked hearts. Finally, his voice, lower now, rougher, threaded with years of dust and distance. "You've got to be kidding me." I swallowed hard, forcing myself to breathe. I didn't know it was your place." My words stumbled out, half apology, half disbelief. He leaned a hand against the doorframe, eyes narrowing slightly as if testing reality. "Of all the damn nights, of all the storms, you end up here?" I almost laughed. A broken, trembling sound, but it died in my throat. Guess fate still has a cruel sense of humor. His gaze softened for just a moment before hardening again. Then, in a tone that was half playful, half deadly serious, he said, "If I give you shelter, what will you give me?" The question hit me like a strike of lightning. My chest tightened, memories flooding back all at once. Whispered promises, clumsy kisses stolen in the dark, nights where he asked me almost the exact same thing, though in the gentle way boys do when they don't yet know what forever means. I shivered, not just from the rain but from the weight of it all. He wasn't just asking if I'd step inside to dry off. He was asking something bigger, something deeper, something we both had run from years ago. I met his eyes, searching them for anger, for bitterness, for any hint that he hated me for leaving, or for letting him go. Instead, I found only a guarded flame, flickering but alive. My lips curved into a small smile, the only answer I could give. And he knew. He always knew. His shoulders eased, and for the first time since the door opened, he stepped back, pulling it wider. The warmth from inside wrapped around me like an embrace, the smell of wood smoke and rain-soaked earth mixing together in the air. "Well," he muttered almost under his breath, "get in before you drown out there." I stepped past him, the wooden floor creaking beneath my boots, water dripping from my clothes and forming little pools that glistened in the lamplight. My heart pounded so loudly I swore he could hear it. Inside, the house was exactly what I would have expected of him. Sturdy furniture, a stone fireplace where embers glowed and snapped, shelves stacked with worn books, a few photographs tucked between them. It felt lived in, not polished or perfect, but steady, like the man himself. I turned back to him, unsure whether to speak or let the silence keep saying what neither of us could. He closed the door slowly, leaning against it once it latched shut. His eyes traveled over me, wet hair plastered to my forehead, jacket clinging heavy against my chest. Something unreadable passed over his face. Part concern, part memory, part restraint. "You're soaked through," he finally said, voice quieter now. "Car broke down," I replied. "On the road. I didn't know where else to go." He huffed a sound that wasn't quite a laugh. "Figures." We stood there, the fire crackling between us, the storm howling outside. Every second stretched like it held years inside it. The air was heavy, thick with words unspoken and histories unhealed. "You look different," I said carefully, my eyes scanning him again. The cowboy hat on the table by the door, the calluses on his hands, the way he carried himself now, older, steadier, harder, but still him. "So do you?" he said, his voice rough but not unkind. His eyes softened again, just for a heartbeat, as if he was remembering the way I once was, the boy who left, the boy he loved. I wanted to speak then, to apologize, to explain, to ask if he hated me for leaving town the way I did. But the words caught in my throat. Instead, I just smiled again, small and fragile, and he seemed to understand that too. He pushed away from the door, walking past me toward the fireplace. He grabbed a towel from a chair and tossed it in my direction. I caught it clumsily, the fabric rough and warm against my cold fingers. "Dry off," he said, settling into the chair opposite me. "Storm's not letting up anytime soon." I pressed the towel to my hair, feeling heat seep into me. But the truth was the fire in the room wasn't what warmed me. It was him, sitting there, watching me with those same eyes I thought I'd lost forever. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel so stranded. The towel clung heavy in my hands as I pressed it against my skin, trying to rub away the storm. He sat opposite me in that chair, his posture casual but his eyes never straying too far. The crackle of the fireplace filled the silence, its glow washing over the room in hues of amber and gold. Shadows stretched along the wooden walls, giving the space an intimacy I wasn't ready for, but couldn't escape. "Hungry?" he asked finally, his voice breaking the quiet. I nodded, though the knot in my throat made swallowing hard. "Starving, actually." He rose without waiting for another word, his movements steady and sure as he moved into the kitchen just off the main room. I watched him, every step, every detail. The way his shoulders filled his flannel shirt. The way his jeans sat snug on his hips, worn pale at the knees from years of work. The boots left by the door still caked with mud. He wasn't a boy anymore. He was a man carved by land and labor, by storms harsher than the one outside. And yet, in those eyes, I still saw the boy who once made me laugh until my sides hurt. The boy who made me believe love was something more than just a word. When he returned, he carried 2 bowls of stew. He set one in front of me, steam rising into the warm air. My stomach growled, loud enough to make us both chuckle. The sound loosened something between us, if only for a second. "Some things don't change," he muttered, sliding into his chair with his own bowl. "Guess not," I said softly, spooning the stew. It tasted like home, hearty, simple, seasoned with the kind of care you only put into something when you expect to eat alone. We ate in silence, but it wasn't the easy kind we used to share. Back then, silence was a blanket we wrapped ourselves in, hidden in the corners of high school gyms or the back seats of cars, safe from the world that wouldn't understand. This silence now was heavy, weighted with years of words never said. As I ate, memories unfurled whether I wanted them to or not. I saw us at the spring dance, the gym decorated with crepe paper and cheap string lights. He'd stood across the room in a white button-down, sleeves rolled up, hair slicked back like he'd tried too hard and didn't care all at once. I remembered the way his eyes found mine through the crowd. Everyone else was laughing, spinning, shouting over the music. But for me, the room had narrowed until it was just him. He didn't ask me to dance. We both knew better. Instead, he slipped out the side door, and minutes later, I followed. Behind the school, under the dim glow of a street lamp, he took my hand. His palm was warm, calloused even then, from summers working his father's ranch. He smiled that crooked smile, the one I hadn't seen in years, and whispered, "No one can see us here." Then his lips pressed to mine, quick, clumsy, shaking with fear. But God, it was everything. My first kiss, my first secret, my first taste of what it meant to belong to someone. I blinked, dragging myself back to the present. He was still across from me, spooning stew, but I swore I could see the ghost of that same crooked smile flicker across his lips. Did he remember too? Another flash. Summer nights in his pickup, parked on back roads while crickets sang. We'd sit shoulder to shoulder, pretending to watch the stars. His hand would graze mine, linger, retreat. Neither of us dared more than that in daylight, But in the dark, he'd lean closer, whispering promises we were too young to understand. "I'll never forget you," he once said, voice cracking with sincerity. But then life came. College applications for me, family obligations for him. The night we parted, he hadn't begged me to stay, and I hadn't asked him to follow. We both wore our pride like armor, pretending it didn't shatter us inside. I left, chasing a future I thought I needed. He stayed, rooted like the land itself. I thought time would dull it. I thought distance would wash him out of me like rain erodes stone. But sitting there, watching him now, I realized the truth. Nothing had ever erased him. He'd been carved into me. Every heartbeat a reminder that love doesn't vanish just because you walk away. He set his spoon down first, leaning back in his chair. His eyes found mine, and the silence thickened again. I forced myself to meet his gaze. "What are you thinking about?" he asked quietly. I hesitated, the truth too raw, too dangerous. "High school," I admitted finally, my voice rough. He tilted his head, his lips twitching as if he wanted to smile but couldn't quite let himself. "Yeah," he said, his tone heavy. "Me too." The fire popped, sparks drifting up the chimney. I studied him again, really studied him. The boy I'd loved had been leaner, smoother, with hands that trembled when they touched me. This man, this cowboy, was broader, harder, scarred in ways I could only guess. But his hands, when he rested them on the table, I saw the same veins, the same fingers that once tangled in mine. Older, yes. Rougher, yes. But still his, still him. And my heart, traitorous as it was, whispered what I already knew. I had never really let him go. We both lingered there long after the stew bowls were empty, neither willing to break the moment. The nervous silence stretched, but beneath it, something pulsed. Recognition, longing, fear, all tangled together like barbed wire. He leaned forward, elbows on the table, and said in a low voice, "You ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't left?" The question hit me harder than the storm outside. My chest tightened, and I gripped the edge of the table to steady myself. "Every day," I whispered. His eyes darkened, and for the first time all night, I saw something unguarded slip through. Sorrow, longing, maybe even hope. The fire crackled louder, and outside, thunder rolled again. But inside that little ranch house, it was quiet, almost sacred. Two men, two lives that had split and twisted, now finding themselves circling back to the same point. I should have felt guilty for wanting it again, for letting the warmth of the fire and the pull of his eyes trick me into thinking we could rewind time. But the truth was undeniable. No matter where I'd gone, no matter who I'd tried to love after him, a part of me had always belonged here, at this table, in this house, with him. And now, for the first time in years, he was right in front of me again. The fire had burned low, its embers glowing like a heartbeat in the hearth. Outside, the storm raged on, wind howling across the plains, rain lashing against the windows in furious waves. But inside, the world had shrunk to a quiet bubble. Just him, me, and the silence between us that begged to be broken. He stood slowly, gathering our empty bowls and carrying them into the kitchen. I watched his back as he moved, broad and strong beneath his shirt, each motion deliberate. When he returned, he paused at the edge of the firelight, his shadow stretching long across the floorboards. Our eyes met again, and something shifted. Whatever wall we'd been holding up through the awkward meal, through the half-spoken memories, cracked at last. His gaze softened, but there was steel in it too, the kind of resolve that comes when you decide not to run anymore. Without a word, he stepped closer. My breath caught as he stopped in front of me, towering, his presence filling the room like a storm of its own. He reached down, brushing a strand of damp hair from my forehead, his calloused fingers lingering against my skin. "You're still freezing," he murmured. I swallowed, my voice barely working. "Maybe." His thumb traced along my cheekbone, and in that touch was everything we hadn't said. The years apart, the heartbreak, the longing, the unfinished story we'd both carried like a weight. Then, so gently I almost broke from the tenderness of it, He leaned down and kissed me. It wasn't the clumsy brush of lips we'd stolen as boys, terrified of being caught. It wasn't rushed, desperate, or careless. It was slow, steady, and sure. The kiss of a man who knew what he wanted, who knew what he'd missed, and who refused to waste another second pretending otherwise. Heat surged through me, warming places the fire never could. My hands found his chest, the fabric of his shirt rough beneath my fingertips, but his heartbeat steady beneath it. He cupped the back of my neck, pulling me closer, deepening the kiss with a hunger laced in restraint. When he finally pulled back, his forehead rested against mine. His breath mingled with mine, ragged and real. "Still the same," he whispered, voice breaking slightly. I nodded, unable to say more. My chest ached with something too big to name. He guided me toward the couch near the fire, his hand steady at the small of my back. The storm outside beat against the house, but it only made the inside feel warmer, more sheltered. He sat me down and knelt in front of me, eyes locked to mine. Slowly, carefully, he unbuttoned my soaked shirt. His fingers worked with a patience that was achingly familiar, the same way he had once fumbled nervously in the dark of his pickup, except now there was no fear, only intention. Each button undone was a memory resurfacing. Each brush of his fingers against my chest was a promise renewed. I shivered, not from cold, but from the intimacy of being seen, truly seen, after so long. When my shirt slid from my shoulders, he draped it over the chair to dry. His hands lingered on my arms, rough palms warming my skin. I closed my eyes, breathing him in leather, smoke, rain, earth. The scent of him was enough to unravel me. He leaned forward, kissing the hollow of my throat, slow and reverent. I tilted my head back, a soft sound escaping me. It wasn't lust that gripped me, though that simmered beneath everything. It was something deeper, older, the recognition of home. His hands moved with care, undressing me piece by piece, never rushing. It was like he was relearning me, mapping the years that had carved me into someone new, yet finding all the familiar places unchanged. I let him because it felt right, because it felt like stepping back into a language only the two of us knew. I whispered his name, and he froze for a moment, eyes lifting to mine. The sound of it between us, his name in my voice after so many years, cracked something in him. He kissed me again, harder this time, and I answered with everything I'd kept locked away. We moved together onto the couch, the fire painting us in amber light. He held me as if I were something fragile, even though his grip was steady, grounding. His hands traced along my back. His lips found mine again and again, each kiss saying what words never could. And in the quiet between those touches, in the stillness when he simply held me against his chest, I realized what I had missed most wasn't the fire of his passion. It was the shelter of his presence. It wasn't just his touch I missed. It was the way he made me feel safe. Safe enough to let my guard down. Safe enough to be exactly who I was, without fear, without shame. The storm outside raged on, but inside, I felt calm for the first time in years. His arms around me were stronger than any roof, his breath against my hair warmer than any blanket. The world could have ended outside those walls, and I would have been content right where I was. We stayed like that for what felt like hours, tangled in closeness, relearning the shape of each other, rediscovering the rhythm of something we thought we'd lost. There was no rush, no urgency. Just two men who had carried the weight of time and distance, now finally setting it down together. Eventually, exhaustion tugged at me. My body, worn from the road, the storm, the emotions sank into his. He shifted, guiding us to the bedroom without ever letting go. The room was simple. A wooden bed, a quilt folded neatly at the foot, a single lamp casting golden light. He laid me down gently, slipping beside me, pulling the quilt over us both. I curled against him, my head resting on his chest, listening to the steady drum of his heart. His arm wrapped securely around me, anchoring me, holding me in place like he was afraid I'd disappear. But I didn't want to disappear. Not this time. I closed my eyes, breathing in his warmth, and felt his lips press against my hair in a kiss so soft I might have dreamed it. Outside, the storm still battered the ranch, relentless and wild. But in that bed, in his arms, I had found shelter at last. Sleep took me slowly, carried on the rhythm of his breathing, the safety of his embrace. For the first time in years, I didn't fall asleep alone. For the first time in years, I believed maybe, just maybe, I didn't have to wake up alone either. I woke to the smell of coffee. For a moment, I didn't remember where I was. The quilt was heavy across my chest, the sheets faintly scented of cedar and soap. The storm had blown itself out sometime in the night. The world outside was quiet, save for the faint drip of rainwater from the eaves. Then I shifted, felt the warmth beside me, and memory returned in a rush. He was already awake, propped on one elbow, his face turned toward me. His eyes softened the second he realized I'd opened mine. "Morning," he said quietly, his voice thick with sleep. I swallowed, suddenly self-conscious. "Morning." Neither of us moved for a long moment. The silence wasn't awkward, but it wasn't easy either. It was heavy with everything last night meant, with everything neither of us dared put into words just yet. Eventually, he swung his legs over the side of the bed. "Come on. Coffee's hot." The kitchen was filled with golden morning light when I walked in, pulling my damp hair back from my face. He moved with practiced ease, pouring coffee into 2 mugs, a skillet already sizzling on the stove. Bacon, eggs, and biscuits, the kind of breakfast that smelled like home. "Sit," he said simply, nodding toward the chair at the table. I obeyed, watching him as he worked. The way he cracked eggs with one hand, flipped bacon with the other, all without seeming to think. His back was to me, but I could feel him watching in the reflective glass of the window. Every time he turned, his eyes lingered just a little too long. He set a plate in front of me and slid into the chair opposite. For a few minutes, we ate in near silence. The food was good, better than anything I'd had in months, but it wasn't the taste that knotted my stomach. It was him. The way he kept stealing glances. The way his mouth opened like he wanted to say something before he stopped himself. Finally, I set my fork down, unable to take the weight of it anymore. "You don't have to do this," I murmured. He raised a brow. "Do what?" "Pretend," I said, forcing myself to meet his gaze. "Pretend like last night didn't happen. Pretend like you don't want to ask me why I showed up after all these years." His jaw tightened, and for a moment I thought he might retreat into silence. But instead, he leaned forward, elbows on the table, his eyes burning into mine. "I'm not pretending," he said firmly, "and I'm not gonna let you sit there and act like last night was some accident we can just brush off." My chest constricted. I wanted to believe him, but fear curled like barbed wire inside me. I stared down at my plate, pushing eggs around with my fork. "I don't want to be a burden," I whispered. He let out a sharp breath, pushing his chair back. The legs scraped against the floor as he stood, pacing to the window. He planted his hands on the sill, staring out at the sun-soaked fields still wet from the storm. "Burden?" he repeated, his voice tight. "After all this time, that's what you think you'd be to me?" I didn't answer, couldn't. My throat closed around the words I wanted to say, that I'd spent years convincing myself he'd moved on, that I'd only hurt him if I stayed. He turned back, his eyes fierce now, stormier than the night before. He crossed the room in 3 strides and stopped in front of me. His hand pressed to the table, leaning close, forcing me to look at him. "Don't just walk away this time." The plea in his voice cut deeper than any accusation could have. My chest ached, my hands trembling in my lap. "You don't understand," I said hoarsely. "I left once because I thought it was the only way. I didn't want to trap you here, to chain you to me when you had your own life to live. And now I'm afraid if I stay, I'll just end up breaking us both again." His expression softened, though the intensity in his eyes never faltered. He crouched slightly so we were level, his hand brushing mine where it rested on the table. His palm was warm, steady, grounding. "You think I haven't spent every damn year since you left wondering what life would have been if you'd stayed?" he asked, voice low but steady. You think I don't know what heartbreak feels like? I've lived with it. But seeing you here now in my house at my table. He shook his head, his grip tightening around my fingers. I'd rather take the risk of losing you again than never have you at all. The words hit me like a blow, knocking the air from my lungs. I wanted to believe him, God. I wanted to, but fear gnawed at me. I don't know if I'm strong enough, I admitted, my voice breaking. He leaned closer, his forehead nearly touching mine. Then let me be strong for both of us. Just don't walk away. Silence fell again, but this time it was different. Charged, fragile. I felt my heartbeat echo in my ears, my breath shallow. His hand stayed wrapped around mine, patient but insistent, as if he was anchoring me to the table, to this moment, to him. I searched his face, the weathered lines, the steady eyes, the stubborn set of his jaw. This was no longer the boy I left behind. This was a man who had endured storms and still stood tall. And in his eyes, I saw no room for games, no space for half measures. What scared me most wasn't the thought of staying. It was how desperately I wanted to. I wanted to believe that we could survive the years between us, that the love I'd never let go of could be enough to bridge the gap. But the fear of losing him again clung to me like a shadow. He must have seen it in my eyes, because his thumb stroked across my knuckles, gentle and sure. Stay, he whispered, and for the first time since I'd knocked on his door, I let myself imagine what that might mean. The rest of breakfast sat cold on our plates, untouched. The morning light had shifted, slanting across the wooden floor in soft gold, but neither of us seemed to notice. We were too wrapped up in the silence that followed his words. Don't just walk away this time. They echoed in my chest like a challenge, like a plea, like a truth I wasn't ready to face. Finally, I pushed my chair back and stood, restless energy prickling at my skin. I paced a few steps toward the fireplace, running a hand through my still damp hair. We can't just pretend the past didn't happen, I said, my voice sharper than I intended. We can't just pick up where we left off like nothing broke. Behind me, I heard him shift, the scrape of his chair, the heavy tread of his boots as he stood. His presence closed the space between us until I could feel the heat of him at my back. No one's pretending, he said quietly. But maybe it's time we stop carrying all that weight without ever talking about it. I turned then, and for the first time in years we stood eye to eye, no walls, no excuses. Just two men with a history too tangled to ignore. You want to know why I left? I asked, my voice cracking. His jaw clenched. I've been asking myself that every damn day since. I swallowed hard. Because I thought it was the only way. Everyone expected me to leave this town, to go make something of myself. And I was terrified that if I stayed, I'd resent you for holding me back. I told myself I was protecting both of us. His eyes flashed, hurt and anger mingling. Protecting us? You vanished without a word. You think that felt like protection? It felt like you tore my heart out and didn't even look back. The accusation sliced through me. Shame burned hot in my chest. You're right, I whispered. I was a coward. I thought if I just cut it clean, it would hurt less for both of us. But it didn't. Not for me. Not for a single day. His expression softened, though the pain didn't vanish. He stepped closer, his voice low. You think you were the only one hurting? I wanted to go after you. God, I wanted to. But my dad was sick. The ranch was falling apart and my family. They needed me. Every morning I got up before dawn, telling myself I was doing the right thing, staying where I belonged. But the truth? Every fence I mended, every horse I broke, I thought of you. Every night, I laid down in that empty bed and hated myself for letting you walk away. I blinked hard, tears threatening. His words stripped me bare, leaving nothing to hide behind. You never stopped? Never. His voice was fierce, unshakable. I tried. I dated. I worked. I buried myself in this land, but none of it filled the hole you left. I loved you then and I love you now. That never changed. The room blurred for a moment as my vision swam. I turned away, staring at the fire as if it could steady me. My voice trembled when I spoke. I thought I'd never find love again. After I left, I tried, Lord knows I tried, but no one ever made me feel the way you did. It was like every hand I held was just a poor shadow of yours. Every kiss tasted wrong because it wasn't you. I told myself I was broken, that maybe I'd had my one chance at love too early, and I threw it away. A rough sound escaped him. Half sigh, half growl, and then his hands were on my shoulders, firm, pulling me back to face him. His eyes shone with an intensity that made my chest ache. You weren't broken, he said fiercely. You were mine. You are mine. And I was yours, even when you were gone. That's why nothing else ever worked. Because deep down, we already knew where we belonged. The dam I'd been holding back finally cracked. A tear slipped down my cheek, and before I could wipe it away, his thumb brushed it gently aside. His touch was tender, reverent, as though he was afraid I'd shatter. I was so angry at you, he admitted, his own voice breaking. Angry for leaving. Angry for chasing something without me. But underneath all that, I was just scared. Scared that you'd never come back. Scared that I'd spend the rest of my life wondering what we could have been. My throat tightened. I reached up, covering his hand with mine. And here I thought you'd stop thinking of me at all. I told myself you'd moved on, that you'd found someone else. It was the only way I could keep going. He shook his head slowly, eyes locked on mine. There was no one else. Not like you. Not ever. For a long moment we just stood there, the fire crackling, the sunlight stretching across the floor. The weight of years of silence, of distance, of regret, hung between us like smoke. But for the first time it wasn't choking us. It was clearing. I let out a shaky laugh, wiping at my eyes. We wasted so much time. His lips curved into a small, sad smile. Maybe, but maybe that's what makes this real now. We know what it costs to lose each other. And I'll be damned if I let it happen again. I searched his face, every line, every shadow, every flicker of light in his eyes. What I found wasn't the boy I left behind. It was a man who had carried the weight of love across years and miles, and somehow, impossibly, it had survived. I stepped closer, pressing my forehead to his, our breaths mingling in the quiet. I don't want to run anymore, I whispered. His hands tightened on me, steady and sure. Then don't. Stay. Let's stop living in the past and start building something now. Together. A sob caught in my throat, half relief, half disbelief. After everything, you still want me? His lips brushed mine. A kiss so gentle it felt like a vow. Always. In that moment, something in me healed. The years of regret, the guilt, the loneliness, they didn't vanish, but they stopped defining me. What defined me now was him, standing here, loving me still, against every odd. We didn't need to say more. The silence that followed wasn't heavy anymore. It was full, alive, humming with possibility. For the first time in years, I believed in us again. The day stretched long, though it had only just begun. After our heart-to-heart, I stepped outside for air, boots sinking into the wet earth. The storm had passed, leaving the land rinsed clean, fresh, and glistening beneath the sunlight. Puddles glittered across the dirt drive. Fence posts stood damp and dark, and in the distance, the cattle moved slow through the fields, heads bowed as if the storm had humbled them too. Behind me, the house loomed like a question I couldn't yet answer. My chest ached with it, the choice I'd avoided for years. Go back. Return to my quiet apartment. My job that felt more like a cage than a calling. The endless nights alone. Or stay. Risk everything, not just my comfort but my heart, by tethering it to his again. The thought terrified me. Permanence always had. What if it unraveled again? What if we broke under the weight of expectation like before? I heard the screen door creak, and when I turned, he was there, leaning against the frame. His arms crossed, his silhouette framed in sunlight, but his eyes, those eyes were steady on me, full of something I hadn't let myself hope for in years. You look like a man standing on a cliff, he said softly. I managed a weak laugh. Maybe I am. He stepped closer, boots sinking into the mud with each step until he stood just a few feet away. "Then let me say this plain." His voice was low, rough with emotion. "Stay. I don't care about the past. I don't care about the years we lost. I just want you now." The words hit me harder than the storm ever could. Simple, honest, final. My throat tightened. "You make it sound so easy." "Because it is," he said. "We've both carried enough hurt for a lifetime. Why carry more? You and me, we fit. We always did. The only mistake we made was letting the world tell us different." I shook my head, pacing a few steps away, then back again, restless. "And what if I stay and it falls apart? What if I ruin everything?" Again, his jaw clenched, but not in anger, in determination. "Then we face it together. And if we fall, at least we'll know we tried. But if you walk away again—" His voice cracked, and he stopped, dragging in a breath. "If you walk away again, I don't know if either of us will come back from that." Silence stretched, broken only by the soft drip of rain from the eaves. My chest felt split in two, fear on one side, longing on the other. I tried to picture my life if I left. The sterile apartment, the quiet hum of city streets, nights spent scrolling through my phone, trying to fill the silence with noise, the gnawing emptiness that no one had ever been able to touch. Then I looked at him, his shoulders broad enough to carry burdens with me, his hands, rough but steady, hands that had held me like I was something precious, his eyes, unflinching, filled with a love that had endured storms, distance, and years. And I knew. The fear of permanence was nothing compared to the fear of regret. I could live with the uncertainty of staying, but I could never survive the certainty of leaving. I stepped closer until only inches separated us. My voice trembled as I spoke. "I don't know what the future looks like. I don't know if I'm strong enough to promise forever." He reached out, his hand warm and firm against the back of my neck. "Don't promise forever. Promise today. And tomorrow we'll promise again. One day at a time. That's all I'm asking." The simplicity of it undid me. My chest shook with a laugh, a sob, something in between. I pressed my forehead against his shoulder, the scent of leather and earth grounding me. "I'm scared," I admitted into the fabric of his shirt. "I know," he murmured, pressing a kiss to my temple. "So am I. But I'd rather be scared with you than safe without you." The words broke me open, and in their place, something new bloomed. Hope. Fragile, yes, but alive. I lifted my head, meeting his gaze. "Okay," I whispered. "I'll stay." Relief crashed across his features, softening every hard line. He pulled me into his arms, holding me so tightly I felt the steady beat of his heart against mine. For the first time in years, it didn't feel like running. Felt like arriving. We stood there in the yard, the sun breaking through clouds, the land around us damp and glistening with new beginnings. I realized then that the storm had done more than cleanse the earth. It had cleansed us too. And maybe, just maybe, love wasn't about never leaving. Maybe it was about always finding your way back. The sun had finally broken free of the storm clouds, stretching across the horizon in golden streaks that painted the wet land in light. The air was crisp, washed clean, carrying the sharp scent of wet soil and grass. Birds sang again, cautious at first, then full-throated, as though the storm had been nothing but a passing shadow. We stood at the edge of the porch, shoulder to shoulder, looking out at the ranch. Water glistened on every fence post, every blade of grass, as if the world had been baptized overnight. For the first time in years, I felt like I had been, too. He nudged me with his elbow. "Come on," he said with a half-smile, that rare mixture of playful and earnest I remembered so well. "Let me show you what staying really means." I followed him down the steps, boots squelching in the mud. He moved with easy confidence across the yard, pointing out the barns, the sheds, the herd that had begun to wander back into open pasture. He spoke of calves just born last spring, of fences that needed mending, of the rhythms of this place that never really changed no matter what storms rolled through. It wasn't just a tour of the ranch. It was an invitation into his world, into the life he'd built with sweat and sacrifice, the life he was offering me not as a guest, but as a partner. We paused by the corral, leaning against the rail. The horses moved with restless energy, their hides glistening with water, manes clumped from the rain. He watched them with quiet pride, then turned that same look on me. "This place is a lot of work," he said softly. "Hard days, long nights. Sometimes it feels like the land takes more than it gives." He reached out, covering my hand on the rail. "But it gives back too, if you let it, if you stay." I swallowed hard, emotion rising in my throat. His hand was warm, steady, grounding me in a way nothing else had in years. I stared out at the horses, at the vast stretch of field beyond, and realized it wasn't just the land he was talking about. It was us. My voice came quiet but sure. "Then let it give us back to each other." For a moment, neither of us moved. The silence was full of promise, the kind that doesn't need loud declarations. When he finally pulled me into his arms, it wasn't with urgency or fear. It was with certainty, like he knew, without question, that this was where we were both meant to be. We walked the ranch until the sun climbed higher, burning off the last of the morning mist. He pointed out the oak tree where he used to sit as a boy, dreaming of the world beyond these fields. I told him of the cities I'd wandered through, the nights I spent trying to fill the hole he left. Every story shared was another stitch in the fabric of something new, something stronger than what we'd had before. By the time we circled back to the porch, my boots were caked in mud, my lungs filled with clean air, and my heart lighter than it had been in years. We sat together on the steps, the house solid behind us, the land stretching out like an endless horizon before us. He took my hand in his, fingers interlacing naturally, as if they had always been meant to fit that way. I turned to him, searching his face, the lines etched there by time, the eyes still burning with the same fire I'd fallen for when we were boys. "I was stranded once," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "But you gave me shelter, not just from the storm, but from a life without love." His grip tightened, his eyes shining with something unspoken but clear as day. "Then stay," he whispered. "Stay, and let's build the rest together." The sun warmed my face, the earth smelled of renewal, and for the first time in so long, I felt not like a wanderer or a man running from his past, but like someone who had found his way home. And as I leaned into him, the weight of years slipping from my shoulders, I knew this wasn't just reunion. It was rebirth. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe for more emotional journeys like this one. Drop a comment below. Have you ever reunited with someone from your past? I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you enjoyed the story, give it a thumbs up. It helps more people find these kinds of stories. Until next time, remember, love can find you even in the storm.